Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the life cycle paradigm. Today we're looking at something pretty fascinating, treating a product exactly like a living entity. You see, if you treat a product like a static object, it just kind of stagnates and dies out quickly. But when you shift your perspective and treat it like a living organism, exploring its whole dynamic journey from this exciting, noisy birth all the way to its graceful retirement, you fundamentally change the game. And this applies whether you're managing software, consumer electronics, or enterprise services. Every single successful product goes through this biological-like cycle. By intimately understanding how to navigate each phase, you're ensuring that you maximize both your product's impact and, of course, your company's bottom line at every single stage of its life.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting the launch process, transfer from development to operations, managing maturity, and lastly, decline and obsolescence.
Listen, a product is definitely not a fire-and-forget missile. It's a continuous, really dynamic journey. A successful item requires just as much rigorous, strategic management in its twilight stages as it does on day one. You can't just launch something out into the ether and walk away. You have to actively guide it across every single one of these chronological milestones to realize its full value.
Okay, let's dive into section 1, the launch process.
Right, so before your product ever sees the light of day, you have to nail down some vital foundation blocks, and I cannot stress enough how high the stakes are here. Take forecasting and pricing strategies, for example. Why do so many companies fail right at the starting line? Well, because if you over-forecast, boom, you end up sitting on this mountain of bloated, incredibly expensive inventory that just drains your capital. But if you underprice, you're leaving millions on the table right out of the gate. You really have to ask yourself, how are we truly valuing this product? Without locking in these key activities and deliverables, your launch is literally flying blind.
Now there's a really crucial distinction here between the internal launch and the external launch. Think of the internal launch as the backstage crew frantically preparing for opening night. These are all those critical steps you have to cover before the curtains open. Making sure the sales teams are deeply trained, ensuring customer support actually knows the technical specs, and getting legal to sign off on the marketing materials. The external launch, on the other hand, is what the public sees when the spotlight hits. It's the big reveal. And the hard truth is, you absolutely cannot have a successful external launch without a flawless internal one.
At the end of the day, the ultimate goal of this first life cycle phase is super practical. You finalize your internal readiness, you execute the external market reveal, and then, crucially, you actually get the product to the customers. I mean, all the marketing hype in the world doesn't matter if your supply chain fails to put that physical box on the customer's doorstep, or, say, if your servers crash before a user can even download the software. Launching is honestly just a theoretical concept until the buyer is actively holding or using what you've built.
Moving right along to phase 2, transfer from development to operations.
You literally cannot wait until the product is fully baked to bring in your operations team. Think of this phase kind of like a product's awkward teenage years. It's growing fast and things can get a little messy. Achieving early operations involvement ensures a much smoother transition when manufacturing or service delivery actually kicks off. It's simple logic, right? Developers shouldn't be designing a complex futuristic sports car if the factory doesn't have the tools to actually assemble it. If development works in a silo, you are practically guaranteeing supply chain friction and massive delivery delays.
You know that dreaded throw-it-over-the-wall syndrome? That classic painful dysfunction where developers finish their blueprint, toss it over a metaphorical brick wall to operations, and just completely wash their hands of it? Yeah, we need to prevent that. Instead, you need to identify operational bottlenecks early on. You've got to define clear transition milestones so everyone knows exactly when responsibility shifts. By establishing and really enforcing these transition approaches, you're making sure the product survives its adolescence and is actually ready to scale up for prime time.
All right, let's look at phase 3, managing maturity.
Look, launch always gets the glory, but maturity, that's what actually pays the bills. This is the prime adulthood of your product, and it's where you generate your real ROI. To pull this off, you need ongoing forecasting to continuously adapt to shifting market demand. You need product enhancements to keep things fresh against hungry competitors who are just waiting to steal your market share. You've also got to aggressively pursue cost reductions to maximize your profit margins as the product naturally ages. And you have to be ready to execute smart pricing actions. Think strategic bundling or targeted discounts to respond to market pressures. This right here is the day-to-day heavy lifting of great product management.
And we can't talk about maturity without bringing up sustaining engineering and support.
This is basically the ongoing technical maintenance and customer assistance required to keep a mature product viable in the market. Think of it as the necessary daily vitamin that keeps your adult product healthy and functioning smoothly for your users. It's not the sexy new feature development, for sure, but if you neglect this constant support, your mature product will degrade fast, bugs are going to pile up, and your most reliable customers will start churning right over to your competitors.
Finally, we reach phase 4, decline and obsolescence.
This is, hands down, the hardest question a product manager is going to face. When is it actually time to pull the plug on a mature product? Recognizing when the resources spent maintaining an aging product severely outweigh the benefits of keeping it alive, well, that requires incredible strategic discipline. It is remarkably easy to fall into the trap of keeping a product around just because it's familiar to the team, or maybe because you're terrified of upsetting that vocal 2% of users who are still running a 10-year-old piece of software.
To take the raw emotion out of saying goodbye to a beloved product, teams must rely strictly on economic analysis. This is the objective financial evaluation you use to guide and justify obsolescence decisions. You just have to look at the hard, cold math. For example, if you're spending $100,000 a year on legacy server upkeep and dedicated support staff, but that product is only bringing in $80,000 in legacy subscriptions, well, your sentimentality is literally costing you $20 grand a year. The numbers simply have to drive the final decision.
So, when the math tells you it's time, how do you actually do it? You have to execute the retirement strategically. You start by conducting that economic analysis we just talked about to anchor your decision. Then you manage the product transitions. I mean, you can't just unplug the servers overnight and leave people stranded. Finally, you execute established methods for gracefully retiring the product. The primary goal here is protecting your brand loyalty. You want to offer a clear, painless migration path so those users happily move to your newer products instead of just jumping ship to a competitor out of total frustration.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to test your own readiness. Ask yourself right now, is your company holding on to legacy products out of actual strategy, or is it just pure sentimentality? Are you truly prepared to strategically kill your darlings for the sake of your business's future? Because what the lifecycle paradigm shows us is that managing a product's death is just as vital as celebrating its birth. Mastering that entire cycle, start to finish, is what truly separates the good companies from the great ones.